Welcome to Constellation.
We have a lot to talk about.
Okay, let's go.
Let's talk Starfield.
So I watched the Bethesda Starfield Direct and it completely blew my mind. But rather than go over every detail with you guys, let's just focus on a few points. The good, the great, the amazing, and the bad. Or the okay, depending on your subjective take. First up,
Graphics and immersion.
I don't think anyone would disagree with this statement that this game looks absolutely beautiful. From the characters to the biomes, plants, ships, bases, cities, guns, suits, weapons, planets, moons. The atmosphere in this game is simply breathtaking. This is hands down Bethesda's best work, and many of you might say that's expected, as it's been nearly 10 years since their last release. But you would be wrong. One only needs to look at the attention to detail in this game, and they'll see that Bethesda has spent a good amount of time actually trying to create a livable, breathing world. This is not graphics versus aesthetics. This is both of them working in unison to create something special, something unique, something different, something more. And this is underpinned by Bethesda's new global illumination system, which lights the stars, which in return lights the planets. Now, many of you know how lighting can affect the game, but trust me, it's the difference between a game looking flat and dead or alive and realistic.
Second point, gameplay.
One of Bethesda's weakest points when it comes to game development has always been the moments-to-moments gameplay, or gunplay I should say. And to be honest, it never really mattered to the fans, as that's not the primary reason they're playing Bethesda games. It was more for the adventure and the exploration, with the gameplay taking a back seat. However, that looks to change with what we've been shown. The gunplay here looks extremely refined, fast, snappy, and enjoyable. From the Direct, it's clear Todd's team has spent a decent amount of time trying to get this right, and it seems they've succeeded. If it feels as good as it looks, it's not a reach to say this is probably up there with Cyberpunk as one of the best RPG shooters.
Third point, spontaneous moments.
Due to the nature of the creation engine and Bethesda's games, you're more likely to get a random memorable encounter, and that seems to be the case here in Starfield. Recently, Todd mentioned how he located enemies on a planet, confronted them and made his way onto their ship. While engaging in combat, they took off into space with him in the ship, potentially turning their grounded firefight into a zero-gravity one. And the key thing here is, that's not a programmed scene in this game. It all happens in a natural way due to the sandbox elements of the creation engine. And if the developers and creators are still coming across new spontaneous special moments, what will millions of fans coming together sharing their experiences entail? A lot of special moments, I believe. Expect interesting stories on a scale only Bethesda games can give you.
Fourth point, procedural generated planet.
One of the fears many people had was with this procedural generated 1000 planets claim. Now for me, this was always a non-story because like any Bethesda game, you could essentially go or do whatever you want. If you wish to visit 10 planets, that's completely up to you. If you want to visit 50, again, that's your choice. So the complaint was always irrelevant. But to play devil's advocate, I do think Bethesda showing off Crete was a mistake. It's a barren, colorless world with uninteresting life, so most people likely assumed all these additional 1000 planets would fall into the same category. However, in the recent Direct, we've seen various different biomes, a diversity of life, amazing planets and moons. We've seen places we want to visit, set up a base and explore, and we've also seen potential story points and individuals we might want to recruit for our ship. To conclude, I believe Bethesda has finally dispelled the negativity behind the 1000 planets claim, and they've done that by simply showing you what these planets entail.
Fifth point.
In the previous showcase, we finally got to see Aquila, Neon, and New Atlantis. Fast forward to the Direct, and it seems Bethesda has changed and in some respects, upgraded certain locations and the people inhabiting these cities. The biggest notable change is probably the more sleeker looking New Atlantis, and of course, the cowboy westernization of Aquila City, which fits it perfectly as the people there are all about individual freedom and autonomy. Apart from that, We know these cities are some of the biggest Bethesda has made, as some will have a railway system, namely New Atlantis, which will help you get from point A to B. The wonder here is, will these points be more slum-like? If the answer is yes, expect differences in quality housing, roads, and of course, the people you interact with.
6th point.
Factions airspace. We now have confirmation that each faction will likely have its own airspace, with Constellation being the exception, I imagine. What this means is, you might need to tread lightly when visiting opposing groups that might have you on high alert. Not sure how that method will work, but we do know your ship will go through a scanning process to ensure you're not smuggling anything. Your question now is, what specifically are they looking for with these scans? And my guess is dangerous weapons, materials, but more than likely Aurora, which we know is only legal on Neon. I imagine this will play some part in the game, as we've seen an abundance of them in the gameplay trailer. Now if you're caught with illegal goods, we don't know if a battle will ensue, but I imagine you'll be denied entry, and that's probably it. Moving on.
Stealth mechanics.
One of the reasons why I loved Deus Ex was because it allowed me to play the game differently than the popular typical guns blazing approach. So I was really pleased to see stealth was an option in this game. I was even more pleased to see it wasn't just an afterthought either. We'll have the ability to sneak around, use takedowns, equip silent weapons, use vents, and more importantly, pickpocket enemy weapons who might be too powerful to take down. This opens up a new question, which is, are you able to play this game in a pacifist approach using persuasion, hacking, mind controlling, and just knocking people out to progress throughout the whole story? We'll see.
Next point, invasion.
Boarding the enemy ship was always something I thought would be fun and interesting, but I'm actually more interested in the transition phase. Going from open space battle to confined corridors in a ship where the enemy knows every corner and levels makes for a far more interesting encounter. What I would like to know here is, can the enemy board yours as well? And if yes, you can almost imagine the adrenaline rush when a far superior adversary comes through with advanced firepower. Can you set traps and turrets anticipating their arrival? After all, it is your ship, you know every corner and stone. Also, if the firefight happens, does the ship receive eternal damage? I want to say no, as that might be a bit too realistic and drain the fun from the game, but we'll see.
Next point,
shipbuilding and customization. In one of the videos I made, I titled this segment Home on the Move. I did that because your ship is essentially your home, with the ability to customize, change the look and feel of the ship, interact with crew members, walk around and build new compartments, ignite romances, and fight on your ship. There's going to be a level of attachment there by default, and it makes sense because you're investing time and effort in it. Mass Effect fans tend to have a close affection for the Normandy, and that's because the ship had life and character in it, and I believe the same feelings can be shared with Starfield. Next point, ship combat. This part of the game actually has me quite interested. Prior to this direct, I always felt this was probably going to be the weakest part. And that has to do with me knowing Bethesda has never developed a game with space combat before, and also me just not being generally into it. I'm into sci-fi, but I never enjoyed the flying part of it. What has been changing my mind is the way you have to allocate power across your ship to outplay your enemies. Maybe you're being pushed back, so you redistribute power points to defense, evasion, and speed. Maybe the battle has switched ties and now it's all about offense, so power is redistributed back to lasers, guns, and rockets. What it essentially means is, there's a strategic element to it all, which makes this part of the game a lot more engaging, which is really all you can ask for. Gameplay mechanics that make you think.
Next point,
special abilities. I mentioned some time ago that special abilities might be a thing in this game, and it seems to be true. Right now we have the ability to make characters levitate, but don't be surprised if we have the ability to use push, pull, or grab items like we saw in Control, or the ability to slow down time as we've seen in Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor. The funny thing is, we actually know there's elements of this in the game, as there seems to be a perk that slows down time when you aim down your sights, but I imagine the special abilities will be a much more enhanced version of this. And finally, the bad. 30 frames is going to ultimately prevent you from enjoying this game to the fullest, if you're on Xbox that is, but when you consider the dynamic lighting, the scale of this game, and what's involved in that scale, You can't help but understand and accept Bethesda's vision. There's a lot to like and love here. This isn't like Gotham Knights or Plague's Tale, where you feel you could question the lack of 60 frames. This is the biggest game of this generation, a genre-defining game. This is the first true next-gen space sci-fi RPG game. This is Bethesda's next game. This is Starfield.
This is Starfield. And that's it.
I have more videos in the works, guys, so if you're interested, consider subscribing. And if you enjoyed the video, consider liking. Speak soon.